everyone, welcome to another episode, another live cast, the Improving Sales Performance live cast. As you know, every week we try to sit down with a business leader, a revenue leader, somebody who's making an impact in growing their business, and ask them a few questions, get to know them a little bit better, have them share their insights with what's working. And I'm really, really fortunate today to have a special guest, an author, a new author. We'll promote his book and let you guys know about that. And Bernie Weiss. So Bernie, welcome. Welcome to the live cast.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Let me give a quick. I printed your bio. So I'm going to go ahead and read it because I think it's so impressive. Bernie is president of iHeartMedia in New York. And after managing one of Central Europe's largest radio networks, he began his U.S. career at New York at hip-hop R&B station Power 105. He rose quickly through the sales and sales management ranks at iHeart and is now overseeing some of the most prestigious radio brands in the country. And over the course of his 20 years, he's coached hundreds of salespeople, everything from rookies to, of course, the most veteran of veterans, many of whom he's very proud of that have gone on to become sales superstars and rose to leadership positions themselves. And Bernie does live in New York, and he's coming from us there today. So if we do happen to hear a little construction or police, whatever it might be, I apologize in advance. A random siren goes off in the background, we'll know what it is. If you're joining us live, and I know there's a lot of people that are on right now, and you want to post something in the comments, we do see the comments. They do come in about 20 to 30 seconds on delay. But if you have a question for Bernie, if you want to ask him something, you can go ahead and pop it up there, and if it fits, we'll ask it. We'll get it on the live cast. Also, if you want to get a hold of Bernie, let's go ahead and put his contact information up there now, so you can jot that down. He's at LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to grab him. And I mentioned this in part of the intro, but I want to do it again now. Bernie's recently wrote a book. It's called Ace It. And we'll put the link up there so that you can go and grab that if you want to check it out. It's sold wherever books are sold, and you'll see it. Right. And I saw you've gotten some really nice placement in some of the bigger bookstores, which is kind of cool.
Barnes and Noble really came through. Yes.
It looked awesome. I loved it. And then the last thing for me to say is, if you are watching on YouTube, if you could like, subscribe, and share. We'd really appreciate that. We're trying to build a big subscriber list and get this message out. So if you like what you're seeing, like, subscribe, and share. If you don't like what you're seeing, well, then don't. But I assume that you're here and that you will. All right, Bernie, I got a bunch of questions for you. You ready?
Sure.
All right. So you and I talked a little bit about this beforehand, but I'll throw it out. I know that you're a tennis player, a former professional tennis player, a very accomplished tennis player. So let's start with this. What do selling and tennis have in common?
Yeah, and before we get to that, I probably should clarify. When you say professional tennis player, I did that for about 1.5 years and then realized quickly that I would starve to death if I would continue doing that. So one of my best decisions was at that point to get into sales and to get into media and eventually management. But what every single colleague since then is stuck with is these tennis analogies, because I just can never stop comparing tennis or sports in general, but specifically tennis, and how it applies in sales. And I'm not sure if you want to jump in there. I'm not sure if you saw yesterday's US Open semifinal last night, the young Canadian Leila Fernandez, 19 years old. So it was a battle, 3 hours they were playing, but her preparation and her routine before every single point was exactly the same. It didn't matter if she lost a point or if she won the point. her preparation, the way she moved before the next serve was exactly the same. And isn't that what good salespeople do? They have routines. They have routines for cold calling. They have routines for preparation for an important pitch or an important first meeting with a client, and they follow it. In the book, there's actually a story about John McEnroe and Ivan Lendl. If you remember these guys in the 80s, right? They were like oil and water. The two tennis players could not be more different. You had McEnroe on the one hand. He was this tennis genius who, had this incredible feel for the ball, but was also always improvising, right? And then on the other hand, you had Ivan Lendl, the Czech guy, who was considered boring because he just followed the process. And he broke every single point down into mini steps that he followed over and over and over again. And the point I'm trying to make in the book is that a systematic tennis player like Lendl is the much better approach to follow in sales as John McEnroe, the genius who did different things all the time, right? Because yes, sales is unique. Like every single sale is different, but they're also the same. Typical a sale follows a certain process, and my goal in the book was really to lay out the entire process from beginning to end, from finding the lead to getting in the door, all the way to launching a campaign. Actually, coming back to Leda Fernandez yesterday. So in the interview after, they asked her, so when it got really tight, like, what did you tell yourself? And she kept saying, I just told myself, trust my game, trust your game, trust your game. And again, that's what salespeople do. They trust their game, they trust their process, they replicate it, and they see success that way.
Yeah, it's doing this live cast as often as I'm doing and talking to business leaders. You hear again this theme again and again of having routines and preparing for every situation and knowing what's going to happen because you've been there before, right? You're not winging it. You're not like, oh, this is the first time I've ever seen this. It's like, no, I've been in this exact situation before. I know exactly what to do.
So one more, and then I'm stopping with the tennis analogies, I promise. But there's many more. Roger Federer, who the GOAT most likely until Sunday, but right now he's considered the GOAT in tennis. He's on record of saying that he knows every single day for the next 9 months. Like every single day is completely planned out. He knows exactly which tournament he's playing, knows exactly where he's going to practice, who he's going to practice with. So there's an exact plan that he follows. And again, that's what the best salespeople do. They know exactly when they go in for the renewal. They know exactly when they need to fill up the funnel. They have a plan and they follow it.
Yeah, I know. You're speaking my language. I absolutely agree 1,000%. And it's a really great message to hear. It's a great reminder, right? Because I think sometimes salespeople see other salespeople and they don't see all the preparation, right? They don't see all of the practice that goes in, the deliberate practice that happens. All they see is the sale that gets made and the bell that gets rung. And they're like, that guy doesn't even do hardly anything. And it's like, no, he does.
It's like when you ask a college student, let's say who's applying for a job, interviewing for a job for the first time in sales, and you ask them, why do you want to be in sales? And 3 out of 4 times the answer is, well, I'm really outgoing, I'm really social, I love people. And we all know that's exactly not what it will take to be successful.
Right. Yeah. Someone told him, you talk a lot, you should go into sales. Right. No, you should go into talking a lot. That's what you should go and do. All right. What motivated you to write the book, Ace It?
So I, as you just mentioned briefly earlier, I had been selling and managing sales teams in New York for the past 20 years. And then 2 years ago, got promoted in a more general management role. And at that point, I just felt, it would be good to capture everything that I've learned, everything that I've seen working in what, potentially is one of the most competitive markets in the country, for sure, maybe in the world, which is the media industry in New York. And just write it all down and capture it for people that are interested in reading that. And then, of course, that was the plan, but you don't have time to actually do it because, you work a full day and then you have evening engagements, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So I didn't really get to it for like half a year. I had the the outline, but that was pretty much it. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And I was still obviously working full days, but suddenly those evening engagements were no longer there. And I just started writing every evening for a couple of hours. And then I just kept going. And that's how it really happened. It's a long process to get a book out. I wrote it in 4 months. It took a year and a half to actually get it into the stores, which we just launched on Tuesday this week. So it was interesting, but I'm glad I did it. I wrote it really with a few audiences in mind. Number one, sales managers that are looking for a sales process they can teach, where they have a new hire maybe and want to say, hey, this is really what's working. Just read the book and follow this process. I wrote it for sales veterans that might look to get a shot in the arm. But then, like I mentioned, also for the college student and people that maybe are looking for a career change and I consider getting into sales and just don't know what they're getting into. It's probably good for them to read because it really says exactly, okay, this is what you would be doing if you choose that career.
Excellent. Let's talk about new business development. So obviously, any great sales organization has to be developing new business. That's just kind of part of what you have to do. What do you see as some of the things that have slowed new business development? Like, what are some of the hurdles or the obstacles that are getting in the way?
Well, I think creating a culture around new business development and around proactively creating opportunities is probably the hardest thing that a manager can do. And even if you think you achieved it for your team, it doesn't mean that it's going to be there forever. You might revert back to the old days pretty quickly if you don't work on it. So I think the number one thing that might slow it down is if the leadership team, the management team is not fully living it and not leading by example and try to become rainmakers themselves and just be out there and reinforce the new business culture. I think that might be one. I think with larger companies, including ours, it's sometimes a challenge because we just have so much to sell. Like our account executives, they have digital and hundreds of digital products. They have event sponsorships they can sell, many different stations in many different markets. And I think what sometimes happens is that they lack a little bit of focus. And I do think it's important for an account executive to have some type of specialization, be it a vertical, like, I don't know, the healthcare category or the education category, or an asset like event sponsorships. Like we have some people on our team that are true event sponsorship salespeople, and that's really what they're going after. So I think that's important. That happens sometimes with larger organizations that they just lose the focus because it's just so much that we have to sell.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up focus. Someone I know said to me once, they said, in sales, it seems like people train or practice until they get it right, and then they move on. And he said, and I think the greats train and practice enough so that they can't do it any other way, right? They can't imagine doing it another way. It's a different paradigm, but I think you're right. I think even the sales leaders out there that do focus for a while on new business development, it's what you said that's the key, is you got to commit to it. You got to commit to always doing it.
Exactly.
Day in, day out, week in, week out. That's excellent advice. So share a few tips that you give in the book, that you give in ACIT that would help a salesperson with new business.
Yeah, so when I wrote it, the one thing I really wanted, one goal I had in mind was to make it as accessible as possible, meaning to make it easy to read, easy to apply, using analogies, using anecdotes, using stories, and then also giving templates and giving scripts that readers can literally just grab and use the same day. And one way I tried to do that was by creating this fictional prospect, and then follow this fictional prospect through the sales process from how we found it, how we qualified it, that it's even worth pursuing, how we got in the door with all different options from seed email to cold call to voicemail message and LinkedIn message. So really, after every chapter that covers theory, just showing, okay, how this would look in practice with that fictional prospect. And, there are things in there from how to focus on a vertical, which I just mentioned, to really become an expert in a category, to speak the language of the client and of the industry. There are things in there around what I call heavy metal sales, which is really the portion of the sales process for me that most people are struggling with, and that's the one that gets you in the door with a prospect. That's the longest chapter of the book, where you ask a prospect to give you time for the first time to sit down with you. And what I found and I've seen is, that's why it's called heavy metal sales process there. It's to do that as a high frequency, high pressure, many touch points within a short period of time. For me, it's 10 days, gives a cadence in the book of, okay, when do you send the email? When do you follow up? How often do you leave a voicemail? But you do that in a very short period of time. And that's how you make the most impact. And then maybe one other one, it's really hopefully explaining how you don't become this cliche of a salesperson who's just out there saying how great he or she or the company they're working for is, and that they are the biggest and fastest and cheapest, and instead really working with insights and leading with insights and teaching advertisers and prospects and clients something new every time you connect with them.
Yeah, that I mean, it's great advice, and it's like I know this has got to be something you think about too, because I know I think about it as well. People, you tell them what to do, they got to go and do it. It doesn't do it by itself, right? It's the execution of the plan that really makes this stuff come to life. But you're exactly right. The professionalism is great, but you have to be persistent over that 10-day period of time just to break through and to get them to notice you.
And by the way, the sales process covered in the book is very customer centric, and I know we're on the same page there. It's just that one part of the sales process is that heavy metal process and portion, those 10 days where you really have to, try hard and try everything possible to get the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I mean, if the person you're trying to meet is on back-to-back phone calls or in meetings or meeting with a customer themselves in a day, they might pick up their phone at 3:00 in the afternoon to look at their email messages, and they might have 150 emails, and they're going to do what everyone does. They're going to do triage and delete. And you might have written the most amazing email in the world, but they don't know you, and they're just trying to clear out their inbox. You got deleted, not because you didn't write a good email, but just because it happened to be a day.
Right.
So that
you don't even have to press delete anymore. All you need to do is swipe right, swipe right. So,
all right, let me ask another question. One of the things that we say around here is we got to provide tools to help people sell smarter and sell faster. We like that. Sell smarter and sell faster. What tools do you provide for your team that allow them to sell smarter and faster? I'm thinking about things like a CRM or any of the sales enablement tools. So what do you have, but also what have you found that makes the biggest difference?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you can say for us, and probably for most media sales teams, is that over the last 18 months, we've really stepped up our game when it comes to using technology and using tools that we provide for our sales teams. I think it's no secret that the media industry in general, not just radio, but TV and others, have been a little bit behind in that space when you compare this with other technology companies and larger organizations. But I think we were catching up pretty quickly. So we are using many tools these days, exponentially more than in the past, on the front end of the sale. When it comes to prospecting, there's all different types of tools now that make it really easy to find phone numbers and contact information and even prospects in the first place. I'll give you one example to give a shout out to one of my old buddies here at Q104 and one of our stations in New York here, Bobby Lynch. So he started this company called Sponsor United. And you know how hard it was in the past to find out who's actually advertising in stadiums. Let's say for us in New York, we wanted to see who's at Yankee Stadium, who's on display, like who's being mentioned there. You literally have to go to a game to find out, right? And he just created this tool and database that within 5 seconds you can see actually the stadium, and it shows you exactly which billboard, and it shows you exactly which categories are in this. That's a great tool.
Yeah.
There is tools we're using that allow us to define playbooks, kind of going back to that cadence of outreach that we are doing in really quickly with emails and other messages that support that. And then there is tools on the back end of the sale, analytics tools, where we can now go to clients and prove ROI and that a campaign actually worked. So there's a lot of things out there. Video software, I forgot to mention, for emails, outreach emails, that work really well. But then on the other hand, it's not just always about, I think, technology and new tools. It's really more about how, as a sales manager, do you arm your team? And that does not have to be some fancy software. It can be writing a seed email for them that they can use as a template for an event that you're putting on. Or maybe it is a list of relevant business reasons for different categories that they can use. Or maybe it is a new proposal template that you create for them. So when you arm your sales team, I think what it does is it just creates this multiplier effect, because you create it once and everyone else is using it. So it just makes your team more productive and more efficient.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's great advice. And I didn't, what's the name of his company again?
Sponsor United. Yeah.
Give a good shout out for that. That's cool. That's cool. I love when I hear about people who saw a need and started a business and developed it. I think that's great. So I know you use the CSS talent assessment to ensure that you're hiring the right people. And I saw that someone asked a question on that, and they said, what are the critical talents you find to make the most successful new business salespeople? So how do you use the assessment? How does that fit into the ACIT approach?
So I'm a huge fan and a huge believer, to say this up front, in the STA, the talent assessment, and the results that we are being provided. We use it on the front end. So before we even start interviewing, people go through the process and we get the score. I don't believe we have hired anyone who was not recommended in the last maybe 5 years. So we're really big fans and big believers in it. But then, and this is where I think the book comes in a little bit, part of the book is really saying, hey, as long as you have the core talents, and for me that means you are a recommend on the STA, right? But it could be 40 or on the score level, 40 or 65. I don't think that matters too much, because I do believe that if you follow a process and if you work hard and if you do everything right along the way, step by step in the sales process, that it doesn't matter if you're 40 or 65, you can still be the best sales person on a team. And I think that's really what I try to instill in our team, that every single person who is on the team, which they all are recommends, could be the best salesperson. They just need to trust the system and follow the process. And
they have the talent to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And the question that came up, I mean, this is a little bit subjective, I think, but I always felt that achiever, for me, the achiever part of it is very important. But I know people that probably know the tool better than I do that think it's others. So I don't trust me on that one. But I think achiever is really important.
And Beth wanted to chime in, so we'll put her up there on the screen. Starting with talent and then providing a strong process. Yes, well said.
Hi, Beth.
All right. So last question. What should sales managers be focused on these days in order to make sure they continue to drive and improve revenue performance?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but maybe let's start with the technology part again, because I think what we just talked about in terms of tools is even more important for sales managers than it is for account executives. I mean, when I look at what our CRM system, which is Salesforce, not a secret, can do now, as opposed to what it was able to do even 18 months ago or 2 years ago, is just unbelievable. So if you as a sales manager don't embrace it and use all the data that you're able to get out of your CRM, is a massive mistake. You need to know the tools that are available for your staff. You need to know how to use them. You need to be able to teach how to use them. So I think technology, if you're not fully on board, it's going to be a losing proposition for you going forward, because I think that will just accelerate more and more and more. And then I think secondly, lead management and lead strategy is extremely important right now, maybe for a couple of reasons. With virtual selling during COVID, it did open up new markets for us. It opened up new geographic areas. You know, you typically, at least in our industry, you're very focused on our own market. Suddenly you don't have to be anymore. You can go into other geographic areas and pursue new business prospects. But then also new verticals, and especially with so many media companies going into the digital space, where obviously targeting is a big pro there, a big argument. Suddenly you have access or you get interest from categories that would have never considered broadcast because it was just too broad, and they're really looking for very specific targets. And there's definitely a lot of upside here as well. And maybe lastly, recruiting. Recruiting is always, in my opinion, at the top of the list for managers. It's the most important activity you can do, and especially right now with so many people kind of willing to look at new careers and looking to make moves, it's probably a good idea to spend even more time on recruiting activities than you've ever done before.
Yeah, great advice. I mean, technology, embracing it, using the data, lead management, lead strategy, and recruitment. Some of the big rocks right now that sales leaders need to be paying attention to in order to have success. So that's great advice. Thank you so much, Bernie. I cannot thank you enough. Best of luck with the book. Everyone watching, if you don't already own the book, go out and buy the book, and you can, the link is there. And if you want to buy it the old fashioned way and go into a store, it's sold wherever books are sold. So we would appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining us. Come back next week. We're going to have another great guest, and we're going to keep diving into ways to improve sales performance. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.